Hi, welcome back to Posted. When we left off, we left on a bit of a cliffhanger. So we know that Rose came over to the house, and they seemed to leave it on a good note. She basically said, if you don't want us to sit together anymore at lunch, I won't. And he said, no, you're cool. We can do that. But when we left off, there was something that happened, and we're not really sure yet what it was, but we do know whatever it is that happened to Dee Dee and Frost, and he does not think that it would have happened if Wolf was at school, but Wolf wasn't at school because he was sick, according to Rose. And he knows for sure it wouldn't have happened if Bench was there. With Wolf out for the day, the seat between Dee Dee and me sat empty in English. For a moment, I expected Rose to come fill it, but she stayed in her usual spot by the door, as if she was worried about taking Wolf's place. I passed Dee Dee a note while Mr. Sword was scrawling a timeline of ancient Rome on the board. Did Rose come to visit you yesterday? I asked him. He mouthed the words, huh? The perplexed look on his face elaborated, why would you even ask me that? I shrugged, just curious. Dee Dee flipped the note over and started to scrawl something on the back, but Mr. Sword turned around and Dee Dee was forced to tuck it in his lap. The big ham had already suspended 4 kids for sticky notes, and some of the teachers were slower to enforce the rule than others. The reason that Wolf wasn't suspended for his dig at Jason was because Mr. Sword crumpled the evidence and threw it away. Mr. Sword, who just last week had encouraged us to share our most profound thoughts with each other on the same yellow squares. When he got a hold of the note now, he didn't bother to read it. He just balled it up and tossed it in the wastebasket. It was his way of protecting us from going to the office, though I suspect he was just trying to protect us from more than that. Mr. Sword finished his timeline in the events of Caesar's life and turned to the class. Why do you think Brutus kills himself at the end of the play? He asked. Spoiler alert, Samantha said. It would have been if I didn't ask you to finish it last night, Samantha. I flipped through the page like everyone else, hoping that because I was looking busy, I would avoid being called on. All right, let's start here. Why do you think Anthony calls Brutus the noblest Roman of them all at the end? Because maybe they were into each other? It was Noah Kyle this time. I could hear a chorus of laughing behind us. What was that, Mr. Kyle? Nothing. I just said maybe they were besties or something. Mr. Sword looked irritated with his eyes honing in. Have you even bothered to read the play, Noah? Or any book at all this year, for that matter? Noah coughed and shrank in his seat, but I could see his smile was twitching. Mr. Sword shook his head. He called on Amanda, who managed to finish the play while re-dyeing her hair, apparently, because it was green today. The other conspirators did what they did because they were jealous of Caesar's power, she said, but Brutus thought he was doing what was best for Rome. Excellent, but does that make it right? Again, nobody raised their hands. Seriously, people, is it all right to murder one person in cold blood if it improves the life of thousands? Is that justified? Simon or Simone, who cares? It's not like any of us are going to go out and kill anyone. For some reason, half the class thought this was amusing. Mr. Sword did not. We are speaking hypothetically, Simone, he said, weaving between our desks, and it doesn't have to be murder. I'm sure there's been some time in your life when you've used the same logic. Some point where you decided the reward was worth doing something you knew was wrong. Maybe you stole something. Maybe you cheated on a test. Maybe you teased somebody, knowing it would help you fit in better with your friends. He stopped next to Jason and Noah. Would you pick on one kid if it meant a dozen more would like you? Everybody already likes me, Jason said. From across the room, Rose groaned. Jason shot her a dirty look. Mr. Sword bent down and spoke softly in Jason's ear, but it was loud enough that I could hear. That's probably what Caesar thought, too. At least that shut him up for the rest of the class, although I looked back to find them passing a sticky note between them, from Noah to Cameron, and I didn't like the look on either one of their faces. Dee Dee, Rose, and I walked to lunch together, stopping by Dee Dee's locker so he could grab his lunchbox and check for notes. More people had taken to folding them and stuffing them into the slatted vents at the top of the locker. That way the teachers couldn't come and peel them off. Nobody had left Dee Dee any messages, at least not today. We walked towards the cafeteria, and Dee Dee and I stopped by the restroom. Rose joked that we were a couple of girls and said she'd wait for us in the hall. Dee Dee took a stall, because he always did his business behind closed doors, regardless of what number business it was, and I stood and waited for him by the sink. I read the 2 notes that were stuck to the side of the trash can. One showed a very nasty drawing of the principal, except he was sporting a pig nose, and half of his face what looked like a pig, and the words that said Pig Patrol were underneath it. And the other note informed anyone who cared that Tracy was a word that I'd rather not repeat. I have no idea who Tracy is, but I took the note down anyway and threw it in the trash. I did leave the one up about the principal, though, because it made me laugh. Dee emerged and took the seat next to me. He looked at the principal picture with the pig. Ooh, kind of rude, he said. Yeah, kind of funny, I countered. Yeah, I guess, Dee said, in a way that lets you know that he doesn't agree. I almost regret starting this now, the whole post-it note thing. He spoke with the sigh of a superhero who was lamenting the fact that they would have to save the world again. I think you're giving yourself too much credit, I said. Besides, if it wasn't this, it would be something else. I looked at the stall doors with all the writing on it, typical middle school graffiti. Curse words, drawings, pencil scratches. At least the sticky notes were easy to clean up. As if reading my mind, Dee reached across and crumpled up the note about the principal. He tossed it in the can, but it bounced off the rim onto the floor. He was bending down to pick it up when the bathroom door opened and Cameron walked in, followed by Noah and some kid younger than us that everybody called T. I didn't know what the T stood for. I didn't know much at all about the kid, except for that he was taller than me, and he hung out with Jason and Cameron. He probably attended the same summer camp on how to be a jerk. Cameron's eyes fell on Dee standing by the sink. Noah and T stood by the door. They made no move towards the bank of urinals or the stalls, and I could feel that spreading tingle that is your body's way of telling you that it's time to go. I looked at Dee, a warning shot to suggest that he hurry up and finish drying his hands, and then I walked past Cameron, squeezing between him and the wall. Just make it to the door, I thought. That was the key. Just make it to the door in the hallway and the rush of the other kids heading to lunch and the chance to blend back into the crowd. But as soon as I took another step, Noah stepped in front of me, blocking my way. He actually crossed his arms, pulling a page right out of that Hollywood thug handbook. Excuse me, I said, hoping to strike a tone that was polite but also threatening. But Noah acted like he couldn't hear me. I tried to sidestep him, but he matched my movement, continuing to block the door. I looked back over my shoulders. Behind me, Dee stood as drowned, the same used paper towel bunched in his hands, his Lord of the Rings lunchbox still sitting on the edge of the sink. Cameron stood in front of him, blocking Dee's way. All right, Aardvark, let's have it. It was a name that they'd used on him before. Close enough to Advic that I guess they thought it was funny, but I've never heard anybody but them laugh at it. They also called him a boo sometimes because it was the only other Indian name they knew. Sometimes that would get a giggle. There had already been one sticky note telling Dee to go back to the Quick Mart, probably left by one of those guys. Cameron snapped his fingers and then opened his hand again. Dee handed over the paper towel. Cameron swatted it to the floor. No, not that. Your good luck charm. Your little geek cube. Hand it over. I want to see it. He meant the dice. Dee's special dice. Dee flashed me a look. The meaning was obvious. Oh, crap. Yeah, that was a given. But it was also a look to say, how in the world could he know? I mean, everybody knew that Wolf was a piano prodigy and that I wrote that stupid poem. But that dice, nobody had ever shared that. We always kept that to ourselves. Dee's lips moved, his mouth working, but no sound came off. Back off, Cameron, all right? I took a step toward him, but as soon as I did, some kid named T came up behind me and put a hand on my shoulders. I shrugged it off, but it went right back on my shoulder again, squeezing this time. Everything seemed to be escalating much too quickly, veering out of control, at least out of our control. I just want to see it, Cameron said. You keep it in your pocket. I know I'm not going to go in after it. The boy behind me laughed. Yeah, he'd probably like that, Noah said. Yeah, maybe. Just like his friend, right? T still had his claws dug into my arms, and I could get free if I wrenched hard enough, but I hadn't figured out that step. If Wolf were here, it probably would have been different. At least we'd have 3 people to fight 3 people. But as it stood, there was 3 of them against 2 of us, and as if Dee and I even counted as 2 full people. Come on, I just want to see if it's true, and then I'll let you leave. Dee looked at me and nodded. Sometimes it was just easier to give them what they wanted. Usually it was just a laugh. That's probably all this was, too. Dee dipped his fingers into his front pocket and fished out his dice with the gold emblazoned dragon on it. He held it up. There, he mumbled, are you happy? He went to put it back in, but Cameron took it from him and took it between his thumb and forefingers, holding it up, catching the reflection. Can you believe this? He said. He turned and showed the dice to his friends, the ones I could hear breathing behind my head. Dee made a move to snatch it back quicker than I would have thought him capable of, but Cameron cupped it in his fist and pulled it away. You've seen it all right, now give it back. Dee's face burned. I looked at the reflection in the door on the mirror, thinking somebody was bound to come in and break this up any second now. More likely, They would probably see what was happening and turn around the other way, but even that might be enough to stop stuff. Times like this, a kind of spell seems to take hold, and you feel like time has stopped for everybody but you. But unfortunately, nobody came in. That bathroom door stayed closed. Seriously, Cameron, just give him the dice back, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Cameron exchanged looks with his buddies. He took a step towards one of the stalls. Is it true you actually roll this thing to make decisions? He asked. Who told you that? Dee Dee said, through a shuddering breath. I could tell he was doing his best to hold it together. Begging or crying would encourage them. I mean, he could run, that was an option. T wasn't holding on to him. Dee Dee could bolt for the door and maybe slip past Noah, go find a teacher, but instead he just stood there watching Cameron hold his dice. Cameron ignored Dee Dee's question. So what? He said. I pick a number, and if it comes up, that's what I do. He kicked the stall open. All right, let's try it. I'll roll. And if it comes up evens, I flush your dice down the toilet. And do you a favor, giving you the freedom to grow up and make your own decisions. But if it comes up odds, he turns and grins. If it turns up odds, maybe we put something else in. The boy behind me laughed. Noah said he's probably small enough to fit in it. Dee Dee held his stomach with both hands and bit into his lip. He looked at me desperate. I'd had enough. I wrenched my arm free with a painful jerk, and I stepped towards the stall where Cameron was standing. All right, you're freaking hilarious as always. Now give him his stupid dice back. I didn't get more than 2 steps before Noah and the boy named T teamed up, each of them taking one of my arms, trapping me between them. Dee Dee still stood by the sink, paralyzed. Please don't, he croaked, but Cameron ignored him. So how about it, evens or odds? And without waiting for Dee Dee to answer, Cameron tossed that 10-sided dice against the wall. Dee Dee came back to life, collapsing to all fours and scrambling across the floor to try to get the dice, but Cameron crouched down and grabbed his shirt and pulling him backwards. The dice rebounded and spun for a moment before settling down, dragon side down. Oh, that's a 1, isn't it? Dee Dee didn't say anything. He just stayed there on his hands and knees. Not your lucky day, I guess. Cameron lifted Dee Dee by the armpits, locking his arms and dragging him towards the bathroom stall. I could see Dee Dee's face, and I could hear him pleading, breathless. Please don't. Please don't. Please don't. Not my call, Cameron said. The die's spoken, and now we have to act. And we're going to stop there. Cliffhanger. Until next time.